Welcome to Radio KD8TTE Part 3 of our series on RadioNet activation. In Part 1, we highlighted what activation was, the need for it, and the need to train to be able to activate a net. In Part 2, we looked at the activation notice itself, the structure, and the means by which the net can be called to action. And in Part 3, we're going to tie it together here so that we can see how the net activation works with the use of asynchronous messaging as well as watch procedure, and then we see how it actually worked when we used it in the Groundhog Day 22 no notice exercise. Stick around.
Black one.
So if you have yet to see parts 1 and 2 in the series, please pause this, watch those videos first for this to make a lot of sense. So our situation has been developing. We have a winter storm that is increasing the likelihood that commercial communication infrastructure will be impacted in such a way that those who are responding to the storm are going to need our emergency radio nets. So we've created an activation notice. The activation notice that we created was fragmentary. It supplements the standing notice. Well, why did we do that? If we compare the size of activation notice 2, our base, with the size of the notice that we have specifically for Groundhog Day 22, we can see it's considerable. If we put the two of them together to make a single all-encompassing activation notice, it's larger still. If we take a look at the Groundhog Day 22 activation notice, we can see that with a block size of 256 octets, we have a 5-block message. It'll take 1 minute and 15 seconds to transmit if we are using the mode MFSK64. That doesn't sound too bad. If we take a look at what we have with activation notice 2, we have, using the same block size, now 12 blocks and a transmission time of 3 minutes and 38 seconds. If we put them all together into a single all-encompassing notice, what we see is a 14-block message, 4 minutes, 13 seconds of transmission time being necessary. Now, the larger messages mean not only an increase in the amount of time that it takes to transmit a message, but it also increases the likelihood that somebody is going to miss a block, or that one block is not going to come through properly and require retransmission. So that again complicates matters further. Now, if we are looking at the size of this notice that is specific to Groundhog Day 22, we might think, oh, this is pretty small. We could actually turn it into a radiogram. Well, we could, but at 160 groups or more, it's more likely that we're going to want to do something like draw attention to activation without giving all of the details. That could be done via radiogram. An example might be if we were to create a radiogram that would use the numbered radiogram 11. Our text then would be ARL11, and then we would provide some additional fills, the detail, the station to contact, and the frequency on which to contact that station. We could even book traffic like this and send it into the traffic system such that it would go to a bunch of different stations that we would need to call into the net. Another alternative would be if we were to create a message that would fit in a radiogram that would not be so specific to the frequency and to the exact station, but would be specific to calling the net to activation. If the net, for example, were to have a procedure that told people if they got a message like this, what they are supposed to do, we could tell them simply that the net is activating. We could give it the name of the activation, and again, we could send it as book traffic through the traffic system with high precedence so that it would be delivered urgently and people would know that they need to get on the air. So we have been training not only in our regular operation as it's spelled out in Activation Notice 2, but also with exercises. We have coordinated weekly exercises via the QTC Internet mailing list, and that has helped us to prepare, to be ready to go into action should the need arise. So some of the things that have helped us to prepare are the training tasks 2130. Report into the Black Swan net and receive with FL AMP a message. This is fundamental to net operations, the ability to receive a bulletin, an activation notice, for example, by direct method. We also have 2133, receive shortwave radiogram. This was an example of where we had people listen on a broadcast shortwave frequency to be able to receive a transmission, and in fact to be able to receive several versions of the transmission, different frequencies, different times, from different transmitters, so they could get an understanding of how propagation would work. 2134 was an exercise called asynchronous collaboration. In that case, we took something and sent it to a number of stations, as we described we might do with the radiogram. In this case, we were able to establish a system of cooperating stations, each doing their own tasks and coordinating all asynchronously. Rather than via net, we were doing it all via WinLink. The same thing would be true if we were using NTS. 2148 is the QSP newsletter. It is a newsletter that is sourced and distributed all by radio, and it operates on a regular publication schedule. The end result is that with these training tasks and with these drills, we are able to get messages reliably to participating stations. This helps us when it comes time to activation notices. Early activation notice is better than one that is more complete, but later. We might even need to provide an activation warning. We don't know exactly what's going on, but if we send a warning that you may be called into service if you're available, that ensures that people know to look for messages more frequently. Rather than checking just once a day, they might ensure that they are reporting into nets like the traffic system. They might also institute the concept of watch. We talked about that a bit. It's very simple. The idea is that you just tune your radio to a particular frequency. You watch for traffic. You watch for information that's relevant to your concern. The activation notice we can send out via broadcast method. That is to say, we can just transmit a message on a frequency that is of interest to the amateur community. And that can give them what they need if they need the details to be moved to action. If you take a look at episode 29 on radio KD8TTE, we talked about the concept of alerting and how it happens through many different media. We can use the same concept on amateur radio. When we're using watch procedure, there are some complications, especially in the amateur spectrum. One of the biggest issues is that everything that we're doing is on a not to interfere basis. And so if we have everybody listening and nobody transmitting, it's possible for an uncoordinated station to come in and start using the frequency. And there wouldn't be any problem with that, except for our operation. The transmitting station has no idea that they're interfering with something that we're trying to do. This is a big problem when we have contest weekends. If we've got a traffic net that normally meets at a particular time, for example, and that's a bit of the spectrum that's open during a big contest, the traffic net sometimes has to move around to make sure that they don't interfere with people that are using the frequency at that time. One possible solution is to use a marker station. A marker station is one that will transmit a signal on a regular basis. Short bursts are appropriate for something along these lines because you need to make sure that stations can report into the net. They can advise if they have information to send, or they can make a request for information if they're coming in looking for details about the activation. It can be sent by voice, CW, or digital, just depending on what's appropriate for the band, and it's a different from net control operation. That is, net control is there to run the net. The marker station is there simply to advertise that the frequency is in use. So they are coordinated. The marker station may be on some kind of a loop, but when net control needs the frequency or another station needs the frequency, the marker station knows to stop transmission and to allow the work of the net to get done. As soon as they're finished, the marker station can resume activity and ensure that the frequency remains available for the current operation. The more local that your net is, the less likely that you're going to need a marker station. Obviously, if you are working on a frequency that's going to allow you to have a very large footprint, that's going to increase the odds that somebody who is uncoordinated with your operation is in need of that frequency. This also fits with the normal pattern that we have in good amateur procedure, which is to use the smallest footprint necessary to support your operation. That means the choice of frequency that you use, the amount of power that you use, and how you organize your activity should be such that it makes efficient use of the spectrum and doesn't needlessly crowd others out. So how did things actually work for the Groundhog Day 22 drill? We're going to walk through what happened chronologically and explain some details along the way, and at the end we're going to summarize and to assess our performance. The first thing that we did was, after we created the activation notice, we had to get it to those who would be coming into the net, listening and participating in the net operations. We did that by going to the primary frequency for that time of day for the net, our standard operating procedure, what we see in the signal operating instructions, the sort of thing that we use to determine which frequency to operate on every time the net goes to action. So we went to the primary frequency and listened. Not hearing anybody else using the frequency, we made a transmission. That transmission was the activation notice itself for Groundhog Day 22. After listening for responses and hearing none, we then took that same activation notice and transmitted it to known Black Swan net stations by WinLink. That would give them an opportunity to catch notice of the activation and to participate if they're available. About 20 minutes later, a representative from Ohio Aries District 9 reported into the net at 5 megahertz, which is where we were maintaining watch. The report came in, the station is available and is remote. And we know, because of our work with that station, that they probably don't have voice control. It's going to be digital only. Well, that's fine. That's where we're listening, a frequency that can use digital procedure. And so the traffic that was available was listed for that station, and that would be specific to District 9. We see here that we have District 9. There are 2 messages for District 9. They are priority. They are of the type Weather Alert Project 21. And then we ask, are you ready? The station is going to respond, okay, we're ready, and then the transmission can take place, and off we go. The next day I did go to that primary channel again, where I had a listing of current traffic. The current traffic would be any alert issued by NWS for the last hour that the WAP21 origination software had created. So I announced on the net my presence, I noted what I had and its type, and then I listened for a response. Not hearing any, I made another net call, and then, not having any response, I made an announcement that I am keeping watch. Notice the use of Z signals here. We'll talk about pro signs, including both Q signals and Z signals, in a future video, but for now, you just need to know what we were doing there. A little bit later, there was a message that had been created to indicate something about the status of the operation and what was going on, some situational awareness, if you will. In this case, we were looking at how many customers were without power from various providers throughout the state of Ohio. And that report was transmitted again on the frequency where we had established watch. We made another net call. Are there any stations that would like to report into the net? And then we did make a call to a specific station, the station that had reported in earlier. We asked, hey, I've got traffic for you. Wait to see, are you ready for it? The station did respond. N2LC said, QRV, that is ready, and he's ready specifically for Weather Alert Project. Upon indicating that he was ready to receive the traffic, I began my transmission, and this is the message that we sent. It is a 16-line radiogram, and the text of the message includes a complete Common Alert Protocol format message. After the message was transmitted, N2LC indicated that the entire message was received and was received correctly. And this is the burst of data that comes when you are acknowledging receipt with the FLAMP application. Now, as soon as that had come in, 2 more messages were now queued up that had been issued by NWS during the time of that transmission. I didn't get a response, so I made another call specifically. I've got 2 more messages, and again ask if you're ready. Now, the reason why that station didn't answer right away became evident later. He didn't answer right away because he was getting that message that he had just received injected into the system. He was relaying it further. The station that received it is the one that is representing a district within the state of Ohio, is not the actual EMA or the actual transmitter that needs to use and process the alert. That station needs to relay it. That station is busy relaying it, and in fact gets it going with packet. So once the message had been created on VHF and he started that relay process, he was able to answer my second call over on HF. He starts to get another message coming in at the same time that his previous message is going out. Now, this message that's coming in is not for the Weather Alert Project relay. It's a bulletin for stations that are in the net. But this shows how a station can start to get very busy, and a single operator station can be difficult to work under load. This is the same thing that we saw in exercises like New Yorker 21 last year. As soon as he acknowledges receipt of the bulletin, there's another message coming in just behind it, and it is, in fact, a Weather Alert Project message to relay. 4 minutes later, the receiving station N2LC sends a report showing that block 16 of the message didn't pass the check. In that case, I retransmitted just block 16. This is not FL message where I have to resend the entire message all over again, or that we have to use ARQ connection. I can send just block 16 again using FLAMP. So if it checks out, N2LC will be able to see that that block fits right in the right place, and then we'll send another report, and it will say confirmed, indicating a good copy of the entire message. In the same minute, N2LC is now relaying that message by packet. And we can see that the control station that is receiving all of these, playing the role of the ultimate receiving station, the EMA, or the transmitter that's going to issue alerts, is logging, and we're able to track the performance of our operation end to end in this manner. Of course, as we are operating, we are doing so during real-world conditions. We are trying to measure how well we can do. That's great, and it causes some interesting things to happen along the way. In this case, N2LC lost power. That's a great example of why we want to conduct our drills in the kind of conditions that we mean to be able to operate in. N2LC didn't just say, oh, my power's out, throw his hands up and go home. He simply moved on to generator, backup power. And that is exactly what he would need to do if we were operating in an emergency where people were depending on us. The next morning, N2LC reports into the net. Didn't have to do a lot of work to find us because, again, he's on the right frequency thanks to the activation notice that specified where to be. It's on 80 meters. At 8 o'clock in the morning local time, we're not going to be able to hear each other on 60 meters. 5 megahertz is going to be way too long. On the other hand, 3.5 megahertz is going to be possible for us to communicate at that hour in the morning. N2LC reports in with a quick greeting. GM is good morning. The station indicates the status still on backup power and indicates the function that he's playing in that net. It's a relay for 4 counties: Noble, Guernsey, Monroe, and Washington. QRU is the pro sign that means he's got nothing for the net. That is, he's there to receive. Now net control can acknowledge that N2LC has reported into the net the letter R all by itself, as in Roger, and the pro sign AS, that is, to wait, and more messages can get sent for the counties that N2LC is representing. In addition to those messages going down to Noble County, we were also able to get messages coming back up. A few minutes later, we had an ICS 213 message that came in from the field. A few hours later, we got another ICS-213 in from the field. So we're able to see that in addition to our weather alert project messages, we were able to transmit information about what was happening around the state, the loss of power. We were able to have our stations operate in conditions that are highly realistic while they themselves were suffering from loss of power and so on. How did we do? During the course of this operation, given who was actually reporting into the net and who was ready to work, we were able to move 9 messages that were during this period of operation. Those 9 messages were all relayed correctly, and they were all relayed within our quality of service objectives. But it's not time to get cocky. Out of the 9 messages that we originated during the time that we had an outlet for them, we got them all taken care of. However, the number of counties that we covered was 4 out of 88 in Ohio. There were 219 alerts issued, 9 of which we handled. Time of our operation was 48 hours and 30 minutes. It was just over 2 days when we decided to pull the plug. And that was enough for us to see some very important information about how we operate, and we're able to see we can get that job done, but we're going to need to have a lot more stations to get that taken care of. As far as the mission goes, from the perspective of the net, how did we do? We spelled out in Activation Notice 2, our base notice says what it is that we as a net mean to do. The net was there. It was able to provide reliable communication. It did not have a lot of stations there, which suggests that it is an untapped resource. Why is it untapped? It could be that there isn't a need. It could be that people don't see the activation in time to know to respond. It could be that volunteers generally weren't available at the time. The fact is, we don't know. No one will know to use it if they don't know about it, and that's the reason why we need to keep drawing attention to what we're doing and to continue to train and to continue to conduct exercises like the one that we did. If we look at the capabilities that we are here to provide, we can see we did have reliable operations. There were only a few stations, but they were able to work. In terms of the arbitrary formatted messages, well, that was fine too. We did 16-line radiograms, NBEMS encoded ICS-213 messages, NBEMS custom forms in the nets, as well as amateur radiograms. The conditions that we covered, daytime, nighttime, emergency power, did it all. We did not have any government station report into the session, but our daytime operations were on 5 megahertz, so they were there and they were able to be called by a government station if necessary. And then 5th, our quality of service was good for the 9 messages that we listed when we had an outlet and anybody was there to deliver that accurately and on time. Those 9 messages were the ones that were specifically weather alert messages. All of the other stuff that we had with the amateur radiograms, the other reports that were coming in from the field and so on were in addition to that 9. So what that tells us is that the net did its job. If we've got more operators there, then we can expect to see greater utility, but the concept, we can see that it works. And that is the Groundhog Day 22 no-notice exercise on the Black Swan net. We're going to continue to perform these kinds of drills as the opportunity will arise, and we're going to continue to create opportunities for these drills as well. In addition, we maintain our regular operations 3 times weekly, Saturday and Sunday both on 5 megahertz, and on Monday evening we operate on 3.5 megahertz. Subscribe to this channel, like the video, share it if you found it to be useful. Take a look at the resources below, the examples that we have, the QTC mailing list where we organize additional training, the tasks that will follow up from these videos, as well as everything that we need as a community to develop our standards, to develop our capability, and to become more useful and more valuable in being able to serve our communities in the event of a need for communication. This is Radio KD8TTE.